Hey everyone, and welcome to another Konoha Reviews. Today we take a look at Star Wars Battlefront 1, the 2004 Classic Edition. I of course already reviewed Battlefront 2 2005 a few months back, and now it's time to take a look at the granddaddy of them all. What is important to note is that I am reviewing the game as a vanilla experience, so that means I'm not including any mods and custom maps. Just like with Battlefront 2, the game is an absolute masterpiece when one were to take in all of the mods that are available for it, but what about the game just as it is? Let's take a look. When Star Wars Battlefront came out, they did not hide what they had based their gameplay of, and it was clear to anyone that they had used the popular Battlefield gameplay formula of having two large teams fight for various command points on a giant map while having the ability to hop into vehicles, both land and air, in order to cause some destruction. Each team has 200 points that they start with, and each kill you make takes off 1 point from the enemy's team. Whichever team has more command posts under their control than the opposite team also will have an advantage, since the points of the losing team will slowly start to drop, forcing them to quickly recapture command posts to even the score again. This gameplay aspect is as solid as a house and still works today. The cool thing about it is that rather than focus all of the battle in one place, you will have multiple skirmishes and clashes all over the map, depending on where the command posts are. This means that if you are having trouble getting through in one point, you can always respawn and attack a different command post and have an entirely different battle at your feet. More recently, with games like Battlefield 5, they try to funnel you into these bottlenecks where all the players assemble and have this chaotic and messy fight that is not necessarily what us Battlefield and Battlefront players want. Even if the battle overall might be chaotic, one should always still be aware of what is going on in the battle in general, and Battlefront 1 does this beautifully. Battlefront 1 offers a few modes, including a campaign, instant action, and Galactic Conquest. The campaign can be a pretty fun introduction to the game, but it is pretty bare bones when one were to look at the execution. In Battlefront 2, the campaign is also not really all that special, though it's definitely presented in a more cinematic way with specific waypoints laid out for you to guide you through the level and proper cinematics. In Battlefront 1, you simply have a battle like you would in instant action or in multiplayer. Before the battle starts, there is a short clip from either episode 1 or 2 in very low resolution to give some context, but in all honesty, it doesn't add anything at all. This might seem weird to younger players today, but back in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was pretty common for movie tie-in games to use this as an appeal to buy their game. Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, for example, also offered clips and footage from the movie, which at that time was still only showing in cinemas. It could be an excuse to already see some of the movie you hadn't seen yet, or you had already seen and wanted to see some more on your own television. Nowadays, with streaming services, piracy, and overall just the decline of movie tie-in games, we don't see this format much anymore. And playing Battlefront 1 also made me realize that we don't really need it. Battlefront 1 came out before Revenge of the Sith, so the movie footage that was used was for movies that we'd already seen multiple times and probably owned already. But let's get back to the gameplay. So each battle has you assigned to a side, and your goal is simply to win the match. In the beginning, you will be fighting as the battle droids. In fact, the first battle is quite unique in that you are fighting on the plains of Naboo against the Gungans, a unit that isn't used in any other part of the campaign or game. You also can choose from multiple classes or infantry, including your standard assault type, sniper, anti-tank units, etc. In the beginning, you will only be able to pick from a small selection, but it's great to introduce you to the mechanics. The first battle on Naboo is also a great introduction, because even though it takes place on an open terrain, it doesn't feel barren, and the colors are vivid, and there's just a lot going on. You already get some vehicles to play around with, including tanks and speeders. Then the next level has you fighting in the capital of Theed, a beautifully designed level that is also reused and reshuffled in Battlefront 2, but ironically, this Battlefront 1 version looks way prettier and is more fun to play. Yet again, you fight against a type of enemy that isn't used anywhere else in the game in the form of the Theed guards. Going this extra mile and having enemies to fight that are exclusive to the level is really cool and makes the overall experience better. They could have gone the lazy route and just have clones fight in this map against the droids, but they didn't. On this map, you will also now get your hands on a new unit for your team as you unlock new units to play around with almost each level. This is really cool and keeps the campaign fresh, despite you doing the same type of objectives over and over again. The game is really good with giving you just enough new things to do and try out to keep it from getting repetitive. The Droideka is the next unit you can play around with, and it's incredibly fun to play as, if not only for the fact that it's incredibly overpowered. Battlefront 1 is definitely less balanced compared to Battlefront 2, and though that might be a reason for many to like it less, for me personally, it doesn't bother me that much. I never saw Battlefront as a balanced game, and don't really want it to be. If it were really balanced, then that would mean that the AT-ATs would be easily destroyed as some other units, or make things like the Droideka shield much less impactful. In fact, I would argue that the original Battlefield 1942 is also not balanced, and doesn't hurt the game in that manner either. When you are playing a Normandy D-Day mission, you don't want a balanced experience. Rather, you want an experience where the US soldiers are at a great disadvantage and have to overcome impossible odds just to get to the beach's shingle. Yet even though the Droidekas are very overpowered, the game can still kick your butt even on the medium difficulty setting. I noticed very quickly how much faster you die in Battlefront 1 compared to Battlefront 2. It's really a staggering difference. Turrets are, for example, much more effective here, as only 2 shots can kill you if you get hit. In all honesty, I think it's a good thing. It keeps you from playing too much like Rambo and offers a decent difficulty, whereas Battlefront 2 has a laughable difficulty setting, even on the Elite difficulty. As you continue to play the campaign, you still will unlock new units and get in these awesome new situations that make each level feel unique. In the next stage, for example, you will be able to play as a Super Battle Droid, and Count Dooku will join your team with his lightsaber. Now, you will not be able to play as a Jedi in Battlefront 1, but the fact that they will still join you in battle is really cool and makes it feel just a bit more epic. There's also something to be said for people who wanted to play as the Jedi and finally got their wish fulfilled with Battlefront 2, although there were also some that argued that messed with the balance of that game because the Jedi units were way too powerful and could easily get 20 to 30 kills no problem. And even though I love playing as the hero units in Battlefront 2, I also can see the angle for that argument about balance. But then again, a moment ago I did say that Battlefront should not be a balanced experience. So halfway through the campaign, you switch to the clones and get to unlock their units as well. It's done very good since it happens just as you unlocked all the units for the droids and now have things to look forward to again. After a while, the game takes some liberties in its storytelling when it goes beyond the Attack of the Clones storyline, but there's really nothing worth mentioning here in terms of plot. The maps themselves are very cool with Kamino, Renvar, and Kashyyyk, but they do nothing for the story. After that, you will still get to play the Galactic Civil War campaign, giving you new units, new factions, and new maps to play on. And as I just said, the maps themselves are absolutely excellent, and many can hold their heads at the same level as those in Battlefront 2. Some are even superior. It's just really impressive what they managed to create with Battlefront 1, and the fact that they had to build this from the ground up, rather than use the same engine again and create Battlefront 2 in 1 year, makes it even more impressive. What is also really cool is that in some maps, you will have 3 factions fighting, which we barely saw in other maps in Battlefront 2. Sometimes there are units that are fighting alongside a faction like the Ewoks or the Jawas. But there's also a map where the Tusken Raiders throw themselves into the battle and can actually capture command posts of their own. Killing these will not take away any points from the opposing team, as they are considered a third faction, and it's cool that they added this since it adds even more chaos and epicness to the battle. There's of course also the Galactic Conquest mode, which was very cool and original for its time. This mode definitely is more fast and impressive in Battlefront 2, but it is still worth playing in Battlefront 1. In this mode, you see a star map of several planets, part of which are under your control and part which are under control of the enemy. You can choose whichever planet to attack next, and depending on what planet you hold, you get certain buffs and bonuses you can use during the next battle. These bonuses can, for example, be additional reinforcement points or having a Jedi character aid you in battle. This actually brings some strategy to this mode, and it's cool to discuss what planet you will attack next depending on what bonus you might or might not get. Now, if you were playing this on console, a lot of these modes are also playable in split screen, which was incredibly cool and something it has over the PC version, since that's not included. It's so much fun to run over the battlefield with a buddy and maybe jump into a walker together and hand out death and destruction. It's pure arcade fun and never gets old. In the end, I'm just so impressed with Battlefront 1 still holding up so well. In some ways, it impresses me more than Battlefront 2 since it does many things that stand out there already in this version. The maps are really good, the gameplay is awesome, and there's a lot to do already. The absence of Revenge of the Sith maps or era does not deplete on how epic and complete this game feels. It's a must-play for any Star Wars fan, and I understand why for a year long it was considered the best-selling Star Wars game of all time, until Battlefront 2 came out, that is. In the end, Star Wars Battlefront 1 2004 gets an 8.4. It could have scored higher if the campaign actually had just a bit more production to it instead of just the short cutscenes from the movie. The amount of game modes is also not that impressive, with Battlefront 2 upping the ante with a lot of modes you can do on all the maps. So that means that I have now reviewed both classic Star Wars Battlefront games, and that also means that the ones I still have not reviewed are the EA Battlefront games. Now look, I won't lie and say that if I were to review EA Battlefront 2, it would not be a bad score at all. But the first Battlefront game that EA brought out would be a whole different story. Now we will leave that for another video.